Thank you all so much for coming to Educate and Act. So just a little bit about the series. The Educate and Act series features panelists speaking on topics of current relevance to civic action and engagement. Programs in this series feature presenters from across campus as well as beyond the university. This one tonight is sponsored by the Center for Service Learning, the Commons at KU, and the Emily Taylor Center for Women and Gender Equity. And tonight's topic is No Lawrence Pride Without Trans Liberation, Lessons from the No SB 180 in Lawrence campaign. You may recognize some folks on the panel as KU student employees or professional staff. We want to be clear that during this session, those individuals are not representative views of the university or their on-campus role. They are speaking of their engagement as private citizens and community members. The advocacy and organizing they will be speaking about today is separate from their work at the university. We hope that during this time, attendees can draw connections between the conversations and broader social change strategies of policy shaping, community organizing, and advocacy. More information about these strategies for social change and others can be found on the Center for Service Learning's website. So it's csl.ku.edu. And I'm going to pass it over to our moderator, Meg Williams. Here we go.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikita. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Jamila and Kate. Yeah, so I will act as our moderator. My name, as Nikita said, is Meg Williams. I use she, her pronouns. I'm just going to have folks go down the line and I'll just pass the mic. And what we'll do is I'll pose these questions. I might also interject some thoughts about my experience because I also was a member of the No SB 180 campaign. And then also, like, we might not all answer each question. It might be much more specific to like the types of roles people had in the campaign. So
hi, does this come through okay? Okay, great. My name is Monroe Hanson. I use they, them pronouns. I was a bit of a late joiner to the No SB 180 campaign. And I don't know, I've been in Lawrence for just over 3 years. Sure, that's good, sure.
Hi, my name is Raine Flores Peña. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I joined, I don't know, at some point in the campaign, not at the very beginning, but also
Pride.
I think we joined at about the same time.
yeah, we joined at Pride, Lawrence Pride. So yeah, I'm the KU student, but I'm here as a person of Lawrence.
Hello, my name is Miguel Roel. I was one of the, I guess, founding members of the No SB 180 campaign. I've been in Lawrence for about 6 years, and I work at KU as an IT person, so you might see me running around campus with computers. Yeah, I use he, him pronouns.
Hi there, so my name is Monty Protest. I go by he, him, and she, her. I work at the Emily Taylor Center. And I was also one of the founding members. It actually started where Meg reached out to me and was like, hey, you want to make a difference about this? So I kind of feel like I was adopted by Meg and Miguel. And they were like, all right, you want to learn how to be an activist, here's what we can do. And I grew so much through it. They helped me. I was able to like make a lot of my decisions with that too. So
Yeah, so the first question is, how did the campaign start? Why did it start? I can start us off on this, I guess, and then I'll pass it down to because like Monty and Miguel said, they were really there at the beginning. But a bunch of community activists actually came together to talk about SB 180, which is a Senate bill in Kansas that basically is looking to erase and criminalize trans people. And a lot of people have referred to it as a bathroom bill because it is about sex segregating spaces, but it also like defines in ways that are scientifically incorrect male and female. And there's no enforcement mechanism in the law itself. And so a bunch of activists, trans, non-binary, and cis folks came together about mid-May, I think, because the law was passed in April and then was going into effect on July 1st. And so several of us met, and the initial conversations were about having like a panel conversation, like much like we're doing today. While panel conversations are important and have their place, and talking to Monty, especially since, you know, Monty is trans, after that conversation, he said something like, I feel like they're putting Band-Aids on bullet wounds with like an educational panel. And also out of that meeting came kind of emerged three things, and that was that the city hadn't said anything about this. They had just ignored it. The police had said nothing about this and what it would look like to enforce it. And third, and this is painful because this is within our own community, was that Lawrence Pride as an organization hadn't really done or said much about it. And so we kind of came to realize that we needed to address the city, and then we also needed to talk to Lawrence Pride and try and get them to speak out about this. And so, yeah, and so Monty and I had this initial conversation of what can we do, what kind of campaign could we do? As he kind of alluded to, like, I've lived in Lawrence for, well, now probably over 12 years with a break in the middle. But in the second stint, I've done some organizing around town and a bunch of different campaigns, and had worked with Sanctuary Alliance and trying to make Lawrence a sanctuary city for immigrants and undocumented folks. And had done that work with Miguel, who's my partner, and Miguel is a very seasoned organizer. So I, of course, you know, turned to him and said, hey, what do you think about this? Could we make Lawrence a sanctuary city? They did it in Kansas City. Like, it's feasible, right? Like, can we do this? And so, you know, so I was having conversations with Miguel, I was having conversations with Monty, and then the three of us came together, and I don't know if maybe Monty and Miguel would talk.
So I actually will talk a little bit about that. I really wanted to add on to what you were saying about the little initial meeting, is that I think that I did absolutely say the Band-Aids on bullet holes part, but something else I really noticed was that a lot of the whole panel was about grieving, which makes sense, of course. And as a trans person, I was absolutely grieving in that moment. I was grieving because my community wasn't watching out for me because there was nothing to do. Lawrence Pride wasn't reaching out. And furthermore, a panel was brought up by Lawrence Pride, and that also just didn't feel like enough. I remember sitting down in Meg and Miguel's living room and writing down all of our little plans, what we plan on doing. It was really, really exciting because I felt like, okay, this is actually something that we can get moving. I felt stopped. I felt helpless, really, until we kind of started moving stuff together like that. We made our big plan with Lawrence Pride, got back with our community, with our little group of people that we met up with, created a group of people that focus on for Pride.
Yeah, I think just because the order of operations was like kind of Meg, Monty, and then I kind of got roped into it third. So basically, right, like Monty and I had this conversation, and Monty was expressing, you know, this frustration that there wasn't really action. It was all about like people were grieving and they want to have panels and stuff. And this is something I've also been very frustrated about in a lot of like modern progressive spaces and queer spaces and stuff like that, just as someone who's been involved in particular, I've been involved in a lot of socialist organizing, you know, since I was in graduate school, really. And what I've seen this shift towards individualization and very much like focusing on yourself and your peace and your emotions. And that is important, but it's become, in my view, almost like the whole thing people talk about. So when something bad happens, people just want to talk about their feelings instead of talking about what is our plan for addressing what just happened? How are we going to move forward and fix and combat what's happening to us? And so, you know, using the tactics and the strategy that I've learned from labor organizing and political organizing, socialist groups and everything, I thought, and just my knowledge of the history of radical groups, I thought, okay, this is our chance to actually do something and not just talk, right? So in that first meeting, we formulated our platform. And our platform was 3 demands. Number 1, that the city of Lawrence agreed that they would not enforce SB 180. Number 2, that the police would agree that they would not arrest, detain, or harass anyone under the auspices of SB 180. And number 3, that Lawrence would establish itself as a sanctuary city for trans people. And we got all 3 of those accomplished. But the point was to have 3, the point was to have 3 specific political demands that were actionable, that were achievable, and that we could organize the whole community around, right? Things that everyone in this community wanted, right? Just from hearing what people were saying and just distilling that into those 3 points and then spreading those demands across the city and organizing to get action on those points. And that's kind of like, basically like in that first meeting, the whole thing was worked out and the rest was just kind of the details. And luckily, you know, it all came to fruition, I think, because the plan really was robust and took these things into account.
Yeah, and Monty also, you know, we were all talking about these demands and Monty was like, I'm gonna take these to like other trans people that I know and run this by them and see what they have to say, right? Because like, again, like Miguel and I have been very conscious this whole time that we're cis folks, who just like love a lot of trans people. And so, you know, so Monty then took that to like a group that he knows, and everybody was like, yeah, this seems pretty like encompassing and pretty straightforward. We then at that point had just like an email chain and sent out that over the email chain, and we had you know, everybody was like, yeah, this makes sense to me, right? And like at one point we were talking about a ladder of escalation and you know, the possibility of a protest of breaking the law by using the bathroom that affirms your gender identity. And you know, and that was kind of the only resistance we got at that point, was like, oh, that I'm not sure I'd be up for that. And you know, and we said, well, you wouldn't have to do that, like nobody's gonna force you to do that. You can decide like along the way. And then we decided that we needed to like intervene basically in Lawrence Pride. We reached out first, had a conversation, were told that they would not make space for us at the event. And so we said, okay, well, we're gonna go anyway. Miguel and Isaac Johnson, who's not here, who's a trans man, they made a big banner that said no SB 180. And so we just showed up at the Lawrence Pride Parade and we hopped in the parade with that. And there were only like 4 of us to start. Raine was one of them, so I'm gonna have him talk a little bit about like what that experience was like. Yeah, and just kind of what happened when because we just kind of were like 4 people.
So yeah, really where I personally got involved with the group was at Pride. And yeah, we were itty bitty group with a huge banner. It was actually a little bit of a not a chore, but a challenge to carry with 4 people and flyers. But amazingly, because I assume other trans people like myself were just as concerned about the new law. They saw this big old fancy, but like big old bold letters like no SB 180. They're like, yeah, I don't like I don't like SB 180. I want to get fuck that thing. I mean, F that thing. I'm sorry. Excuse me, F that thing. So then tons of people, like, I don't know, many people started joining from the crowd, like walking behind us, and many people were interested in the informational flyers that we were handing out. People were like shouting in support, like there was this really strong energy. And really, like, that was the first bit of like community building I felt around this issue. And we even had some people who joined us from the streets, I guess, who like ended up joining us, like maintaining their participation in this campaign from there. And it was just really amazing to see, like, I'm not the only one who's worried about this. And those who were like maybe not aware of it, because let's be honest, state house politics can be very overwhelming. They were more than happy to read the flyer and our information and be like, wow, this is terrible. I don't like it. I'm gonna do something. I like that you guys want to do something about it. So yeah, it was just our first foray into, I guess, Lawrence. Did have a very strong positive reaction. And I think that helped a lot because like we had some photos of us in the newspaper, in the Lawrence Times article. And it just got a lot of eyes on the issue initially, and also people to get aware of, like, there's this new scary bill that was just passed, for those who might not be aware. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah,
Sorry.
definitely. So the whole banner idea, which ended up being a big thing because it got us into a lot of newspapers, it got a lot of buzz. That was something that I brought up to Isaac, who's also my boyfriend, the night before. And that was based on my experience after Trump was inaugurated. I don't know if people remember, there were huge protests all over the place. I was in one of those protests in upstate New York, where I'm from. And I was part of the Socialist Party contingent there. And one thing we did is the night before, we were like, oh, we have to have red flags, right? That's like, so everyone knows we're socialists with red flags. That's part of our thing. So we all made red flags. And it ended up being a huge thing because a lot of people in the crowd saw that and they were like, there's socialists here. I want to join you. That's really cool. So that taught me, and this is something I've always carried forward, if you build it, they will come, right? A lot of people in the society are very alienated politically. They feel powerless, like they're frustrated. They don't agree with what's going on, but they don't know what to do about it. So if you just have your banner loud and proud saying, we're doing something about this, people will be like, oh my God, let me go join them. They're doing something about this, and they'll come and they'll stand behind you. So that's why we made the banner. And it ended up being huge. Just all people started coming in and helping us hold the banner or standing behind us or even grabbing a stack of flyers and handing out the flyers. So yeah, I think that's just a really important takeaway, is just to like have something unifying that brings people in and shows them you're not the only one who's against this. Like there's other people like you, come and join us. We're doing something about this.
So furthermore, something else I wanted to add that really helped us out was when Lawrence Pride was like, unfortunately, we're not gonna have you speak, we're not gonna have you speak on stage, we're not gonna we're not gonna hold space or whatever. I ended up reaching out to one of my friends that I found out is going to be on stage there. And I was like, hey, just so you know, this thing happened between us. I'm working for No SB 180 Lawrence, which is a campaign. Would you please be willing to speak on that there? And didn't know how that was going to go. What really benefited me there was knowing people, essentially, and being able, because I saw they got on stage and they read our flyer word for word, and against their own, or against Lawrence's Pride's necessary wishes, I suppose. And it was just really helpful. It was great to see that happen and to see that become a big deal.
I joined a week before Pride, but I was recovering from a very serious injury. I could not walk without crutches at the time, so I was not able to join in the parade, but I brought a bunch of signs that got distributed to people, and people really like flowed in behind that banner with a bunch of signs, and it was amazing. And some of the crucial things that were on that flyer were our 3 demands, as well as our first event. So it was like, this is what we want, this is how we're doing it, show up and come help. Right, immediately off the bat, we had that going for us.
Yes, I was going to say something similar, like great minds, yeah, just that yeah, the importance of having the next step ready for the people, because like really we were trying to engage the people. This was never about us. It was about like how much broad community support can we garner to show the city that Lawrence is not gonna stand for transphobia, like, and so we always tried to like make a next step available or a way to get involved available. And so the first kind of action we had was going to a city commission meeting.
It was the email.
The letter writing.
Yeah, but it was like in anticipation of a specific meeting date. It was like, okay, first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna meet at the ECM, which has been so gracious to us. The staff there has been part of this movement since the beginning. So I just want to give them a shout out. Liz Besner and David Cooper in particular. And we said, come here and we'll have a letter writing campaign. We'll do like a social media campaign. We'll do videos of trans folks in front of a flag saying why the city commission should make this a sanctuary city. We took pics of like cis folks holding up our demands to show their solidarity, to share on social media. And then we also gave people like links and stuff to do it from home, right? Like you don't have to come to the meeting like here, just do it from your home. And then, yeah, did we go to 2 city commission meetings? It felt like a lot more, but yeah, and so the first city commission meeting, we showed up. But I do want to backtrack a little bit in terms, because one of the things is like, I lost the questions here, but like what strategies or tactics like helped this be effective, this campaign? And I think social media was really important as well as physical media. So like Miguel said, like the banner, it was hugely important. I designed a lot of the graphics and flyers, listed some of them as well. Oh, thank you. Listed, if you saw the ones that had Marsha P. Johnson that were like really beautiful, those are the ones that they did. Mine were just like the text, which got the point across. But anyway, so we like launched on social media before Pride, but not too far in advance of it. And so people were kind of like, what is this? What is this? And I was shocked at how quickly we gained so many followers. And so, you know, we posted consistently, but again, it was always like with an action or like something you could do, or we needed you to be here at this time, or you know, contact this person. And but we also just did like a general call for like solidarity, and the businesses en masse, local businesses en masse, were like very forthcoming in supporting this campaign. You know, in particular, we had the folks who own Lucia Granada and the Bottleneck put No SB 180 in Lawrence on their marquee, and I got chills again. Like every time I say that or think about that, it just gives me chills. You know, unprompted, just did that. Took, you know, their staff, they trans flag, all holding the demands, pictures posted to social media, and so, Paul and Meredith, the owners of Wonder Fair, showed up, and spoke at city commission meetings on our behalf, and so that was really, the Raven bookstore was one of the first to post on social media and post our demands in their store next to books about like trans issues and lives. So, yeah, I think the videos also that we did, Monty did the first video that we posted, and then Isaac did one that was calling on Lawrence to like be on the right side of history, and kind of it was on the eve. I don't know, it was very heady. There was something about like the fact that this was like pride, and like trans folks were being discriminated against, like not only by cis het folks, but like by the queer community that we're all a part of. And like a sense of kind of like, this is, I don't know, like it just, there was something in the air.
Absolutely.
But I don't know if anybody wants to talk about the maybe like the city commission meetings and how we come to that.
Sure, so for letter writing, meetup was on June 5th, and then the first city commission meeting that we went to was on June 6th. We had a pretty good showing at that one with public comment, and a lot of written public comment as well. And then the city commission had the next Tuesday off. So they had 2 weeks to think about what we said. And city commission agendas are posted on the Thursday before their meeting. And so on Thursday, the 15th, their agenda didn't have anything about no SB 180 or trans safe haven in Lawrence. And so that meant that we were going to show up again. And we were tabling at another event on June 17th, an LGBTQ activist panel at the Arts Center. And someone spoke to me and said, you know, there's no cap on public comment. Like each person only gets 3 minutes, but if you've just got a bunch of people. And I was like, wait, we could like stop them from doing anything? Like we could just ruin their whole evening? And so we started talking about that on like Saturday night, and we decided to like launch that on Sunday, and that was also the same weekend that Jamie Miller drafted the first edition of our safe haven ordinance proposal. And I became our designated proofreader. And so that weekend was just a flurry. It was like 3 days of craziness. So yeah, she drafted that, we posted it publicly, and then we were trying to get literally as many people as possible to show up. How long can we keep them here? And we created like a little bit of a sign up form so that, you know, people wouldn't have to wait for like 2 or 3 hours to speak. And I think once things got started, I mean, the sign up form was out the window. But I think it really encouraged people of like, oh, there's a lot of people that are gonna come do this. I'm not gonna be the only one that's gonna come do this. We had 3 hours of public comment on Tuesday, June 20th. 3 hours, over 80 people, plus written public comment. And this was in person and online, and it was amazing to see. It was amazing to be there. Like we were all in the city hall lobby, which is like separated from like where they actually meet. So we were getting rowdy in the lobby. It was just breathtaking. Like so many people said, I've never done something like this before, but this needs to happen. So many people, cis people, trans people, it just makes me speechless every time I think about what we did, what people did, just by showing up.
So, actually, to add on what Monroe said, I think that we started making jokes about how the city commission meetings are the new queer hangouts.
That was a couple weeks later.
That was a couple of weeks later, but, I remember, one of the biggest activist moments, I think, in my mind, was after the call, directly after the call and email campaign. I'd made some calls to our, commissioners, as part of the call and email campaign. And I went to work directly after. I got a call about 2 hours into work, and it was from one of our commissioners. And it kind of felt like my mom talking down to me again. Because she's like, hey, you know how the city commission meetings work, you know about public comment, you know about this, and I was just shaking. I was really, really nervous. And then I took that moment and I mentioned it to Meg and Miguel, and they were like, dude, that means we're doing something. Like, that's a good thing. I also remember that 3-hour public comment and how that felt. And just to see that unravel, because I tried to be there the whole time, it was a little late, but just to see that unravel and stay the whole time, it was just absolutely incredible. And it absolutely did get rowdy out there. It was just so much fun. And I never thought that like activist stuff could be that much fun, basically, even if it was something serious in a city commission meeting like that.
Also, something really cool that happened is, well, city commission public comment is for like everyone to talk about what concerns them. The community has a point of contact with the city commissioners. And one cool thing was like people who were there for their own issues, who had planned ahead of time, like, hey, we're gonna talk to city commissioners about this. They still made the point of their public comment, like their issue. They still were like, hey, I'm in solidarity with this campaign. Y'all should make this y'all should make Lawrence a trans safe haven. And it was because I don't know, people from all kinds of strokes just came out, even if they were there for their own thing, and it was really like a beautiful point of solidarity. How you don't have to be trans or even in the community to be like, hey, this is kind of messed up, I don't like it, and stand up against that. Yeah.
Yeah, one more thing about the public comment and using that as a key part of our public strategy. From the beginning, we didn't want to replicate mistakes that we'd seen in the past where groups will, instead of reaching out to the people in the public and organizing them, they want to immediately jump into having private meetings with commissioners and politicians and government officials and everything. And from the beginning, we always said that they're not the people who decide what happens in this city. The people decide. The people decide what's politically possible. And so our strategy was always to go to the people first. And that's why we went to Pride first with our message, not to the city commission first, because we wanted to talk to the queer community of Lawrence about these issues going on about this campaign, and also to see what reaction we got. If people agreed with it, if people liked it. And unanimously, everyone was extremely excited about it. So that's how we knew we were doing the right thing. And then to get everyone out to the city commission meeting so that we could take politics into our own hands rather than, delegating just a few people to go do it. We had the whole community come out and say, this is what we want. And that way also the people in power can't just say, oh, well, does the whole community really want this? Or is this just you and your friends who are saying this? Like, no, literally 3 hours, 80 people saying this is what they want, hundreds of people sending in emails, calling, everything, them just being inundated with these demands constantly. It made it overwhelming and they had to act. And that was another big thing, is that people talk about, oh, city government moves slow. This is something people in power like to say, oh, you don't realize how complicated it is. It's so slow. There's a process. We're working on other things, blah, blah, blah. This is all just an excuse so that they don't have to do their job. They don't have to risk anything politically, because implementing these demands is a political risk for them, right? If the state government decides to come after them, if Chris Kobach decides to come after them for it, they have to defend it. They have to do some work. And ultimately, they don't want to risk their political careers on something unless it's something they really want to do. So we had to force their hand ultimately. And we knew that from previous campaigns, they can take upwards of a year to do anything in response to what the public wanted, and we knew we didn't have the luxury of time. SB 180 is going into effect on July 1st. We had literally a month and a half to get action on the city's behalf. So we needed to do that. We had to mobilize the whole public repeatedly over and over and over again to make it clear to them they didn't have an option. They couldn't tell us to wait, because telling us to wait created an untenable political situation for them. It made them look worse and worse and worse every time they put it off. And that's what happened. That's why that second commission meeting was so much bigger, because I think the public of Lawrence honestly expected them to do something after that first meeting. And when 2 weeks went by and nothing had happened, no statements, no nothing, people were furious, and they came there saying that, and they said, if you tell us we have to wait any longer, it's unacceptable. You've already failed by not doing anything up to this point. So please just do something, or you're just gonna keep repeatedly failing and losing our confidence. And that really put pressure, particularly on the city legal department, once we actually had a delegation meet with them about passing ordinance.
Right, so at the end of the 3 hours, the commissioner who was leading the meeting asked David Brown, Alex Eva Williams, and no SB 180 Lawrence, yeah, to email the city attorney and director of equity and inclusion to set the time to talk. There was then some yelling from the lobby because we'd already drafted an ordinance, but that was fine. All right, let's talk. So then a small group of us, I think 4, me, Miguel, Jamie Miller, who's a fantastic paralegal, and Alex Kimball Williams began a meeting with city legal team and talking about what we needed, what we wanted, and we wanted to hear their feedback because we'd already provided a draft, right? We already did the hard work. And it wasn't our job to write a draft, but you know, we did. So we went back and forth with city legal over the next couple weeks, a couple meetings. We had to really get on them and be like, no, we're meeting like next week. This is time sensitive, we're meeting next week. And their first proposal was not acceptable. So then we went back to the drawing table and demanded that they actually address our demands and work on another proposal that would be a legally binding city ordinance and go into city code. And we did achieve that. The first reading was like July, the last meeting in July, which would have been like the 3rd week of July, and then the second reading was on August 1st. Ordinance 9999 was passed into law in Lawrence, which is the coolest number we could have randomly gotten. And then we had a big party about it afterwards. And that's another major strategy and tactic, because I think we could talk about city legal a bit more, but we continued engaging with the people. We were like, hey, you want to be in space with other trans people? Fuck yeah, I want to be in space with other trans people. We're cool. And saying that obviously makes me cooler. But we kept having like really fun community events. Do you want to talk about that? The no place like LFK?
Yeah, so there was that moment, right? So the city commission only meets 3 times a month. They don't meet the 4th time. And so there was this like time gap between the meeting and then July 1st when the law would go into effect, and then the next one. And we knew we weren't gonna get it like passed in time, right? And so we were like, we gotta keep community engagement up. And we thought about different things. We're like, do we do a march? You know, we thought about doing something like more politicized in that way, like do we do a march with like a rally? And then we decided instead to do a concert celebrating our trans and gender non-conforming performers in town. And to like create space, and we called it No Place Like LFK. And we had a fun Oz theme going, but you know, the idea being that like Lawrence is home to trans folks and they're not leaving, and are also like what make Lawrence beautiful, so. So yeah, and that was great, like the community came out and we just did it all like, we did donation based to go to the performers. And you know, like some of the performers who are, you know, really like beloved in the community. Some of them have been dealing with like houselessness, which is an issue that like we know trans folks disproportionately deal with, and so it felt really good to be able to raise money to just like directly give to them for sharing their art with us. And all of them were like flabbergasted. I don't remember what the exact amount was, but the 50 each. Oh yeah, because
No,
Monty's
it's
like,
100.
oh, 100 each,
Pretty
yeah. And we had like a lot of performers. And so they were just like, oh my God, like I've never gotten this much for a gig, like ever, you know, so that was really cool. And yeah, and we're running out of time.
Oh, no.
I know, and we could probably talk forever about this experience. I guess kind of like, you know, one of the questions is what's next for members of the No SB 180 and Lawrence campaign, and just thinking about like what Monroe said and about community events. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about TLC.
Sure, so, ordinance 9999 was passed, that was the third and final one of the initial demands of the campaign, so single issue campaign achieved its goals. What's next for us? And a lot of us loved the work that we were doing, and certainly the work wasn't over. So we decided to transition into Trans Lawrence Coalition, which is TLC, which is the best acronym. And we're gonna keep doing a lot of what we've been doing. We have an upcoming meeting with city lawyers again to discuss some of the definitions in chapter 10. We are putting on community events. We want to keep doing cool things and making space for trans people, and like, yes, we live here and we support each other. So we have on September 30th, a trans clothing swap at the Lawrence Art Center, who is graciously giving us space. We also have 3 or 4 drop-off locations that are graciously accepting clean clothing donations for us. And then the clothing swap will be entirely free, you know, show up and take clothes that you like. How cool is that? So we also have a transliterations reading group in partnership with the Emily Taylor Center that's going to be at the ETC, the first one of those at the Solidarity Library at the ECM. And the first one of those is going to be at the ECM Solidarity Library on September 28th. All of this is on our socials, which are still very, very active and have amazing graphics. Yeah, I want to say that I got involved in this because I was fucking angry, you know? And I was also injured, and I couldn't do anything about what had just happened in my home, right? And then all of a sudden there was an opportunity to do something. And by God, I was gonna fucking do it. So for me, anger has been a very, very powerful motivator. Yeah, I don't know. Anything else?
I think what we really learned and what I really learned during this campaign, it's like, you don't really have to be, I mean, definitely it helped a lot to have the experience of folks who were seasoned in organizing and activism, but I kind of just joined in randomly. And it was really great to learn that even though I'm some guy, like I was able to help and contribute, and really that's what a lot of the success of our campaign came from community members from all over, like all having different subsets of things that they're good at, like coming together to help move our campaign forward. Like we all had something important to contribute, and like there wasn't exactly like a little like pop-up that appeared like, are you ready to become an activist right now?
TM.
Like, I just, you know, I'm
Do
just
you
a
accept your mission?
sub-story, but no, it's like. Everyone can contribute to this, small or little, huge or large, like public comment, like the concert, like everybody, I don't know, like we wouldn't be here without the community. And they were so important and amazing, and I love y'all.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway is just, and Meg and I have spoken about this over the years. We've gotten to a point where we were kind of disillusioned with a lot of political organizing and the political possibilities. And that's because we live in an age of really high political dispossession and political alienation. We're basically told that the only decisions we can make that have any political importance is checking a box every 2 years. And that's it. You just vote, and then maybe what you buy, that matters too, right? Voting with your wallet. That's basically the extent of what we can do to change the world, or so we're told, or maybe the discourse we do, whatever. And this really, I guess, re-taught me that no, you can change your community. You can change the world. You and your friends can make a political intervention in the actual structure of politics and be successful. You can change it and change history. It's amazing to remember that you can do that, to remember that capacity, because there's so many people who try and make you forget that, who try and teach you that, no, you can't really do that. You're not professional enough. You don't really know how this works. You're not an elected official. You're not working at a nonprofit that does this for a living. You know, you don't know what you're doing. None of us are professional activists. None of us are professional activists. Yeah, we all heard that from people who do work in nonprofits and people who do work in government.
This isn't gonna work, you can't.
Exactly, they gave us a million reasons why we were wrong. We don't really understand, we're misled, whatever, and yet
Here we are.
Here we are. So I think that's the main lesson. Don't give up your power. Recognize you have power. Don't give up your power. Don't let people tell you that you can't change your community.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what I really wanted to add was, I was raised with a Republican mother and, a quiet father. And, I remember when I became politically aware and I was reading Abby Hoffman and Emma Goldman in my bedroom. And I said, wow, I would love to be like these people one day. And I always thought that I never would. And becoming an activist is like, it's me now. It's such a big part of me. I look on passing ordinance 9999 and I'm like, we did that. I helped do that. It's crazy. And I'm about to cry. But it was sorry. It was just a really, really great way for me to get involved and like feel like have that element of self-actualizing for myself and feel like, no, it's not that I'm not ever gonna be these people. I just gotta do what I can do. I'm gonna become my own activist. It was great. So
Hell yeah.
Do you want to take any questions?
I was just about,
Oh, sorry.
no, does anybody want to ask any questions? We got a little time. Yeah,
So,
do you want the mic?
yeah, I think for the. So quick one, you mentioned this kind of tension between this more grassroots organizing and institutional one. So specifically, why or I don't know, like what's going on with the women's pride part of the story, like why there's a tension there, like how, or most importantly, like is there like ways forward? Like are you partnering this film in that way, or like is there, yeah, so what's the story there, like why they initially they don't want to get involved?
I think I can speak to that.
You don't have to say.
Yeah, you don't
want Yeah, no.
So, yeah, I don't want to single out people too much. And just instead talk about broad structures, because I think that's what's really important. there tends to be a kind of institutional inertia when you are an established organization, right? You're a nonprofit, you are a, you know, service organization or whatever. You have these sort of established relationships with people in power, with city officials, you have partnerships, you partner on things. And so when something comes up that is of big political importance, that is kind of risky, you have a choice to make. Do you risk your relationships with those political officials and with those power structures and the people who donate money to you and your funders for the sake of that political battle? Or do you sit on the sidelines and say, listen, it was really hard for me to get this organization going. It was really hard for me to get all this funding. I don't know if I want to put all that at risk for this thing that I don't even know if this is going to be successful, yada, yada, yada. So I think it's just the institutional inertia. It's not any one organization's fault, because all of them are like that. Honestly, all of them are. It's just a matter of political risk, like risk reward. That's all it is. People weighing risk and reward.
Yeah, and I would just say, I mean, I didn't even fully recognize this when the conversations were happening with them, with Lawrence Pride, that the city of Lawrence was their main sponsor. So, you know, in retrospect, it's exactly what Miguel's saying, right? Like, we are telling them, like, here are our demands, which are to the city of Lawrence, saying, you need to do this, you need to do that. And so, yeah, there's risk there, right? Like they would have to decide, oh, maybe the city will take our funding away, or they won't fund us next year, because we challenged them, you know, and so. And I don't think that's an excuse, and I also, I would say, like, at the moment, I don't think there are plans to partner, but that's not closed off. I mean, would you, yeah, I think that, you know, we're open to having more conversations about like what happened and how to move forward together. We haven't really, you know, it was kind of just, we realized like, okay, they're not gonna support us, like, we gotta move on. And it's not like, and I don't like want to do a public call out or anything like that. It's just, this is what happened. They said, no, you can't speak. And we are guessing at their reasoning, but again, we don't really know their actual reasoning. And yeah, and I think again, it's just like you were saying, like once something becomes like institutionalized, and then you're like worried about like these outside pressures and things, and it's also like just the story of the way trans people have been treated within the LGBTQ movement, right? Is like trans people have been at the forefront of fighting for the rights of people who are gender variant or like love people of the same sex, you know, throughout sort of the history of the gay liberation movement. And yet like we're really soon forgotten. Like you have Sylvia Rivera going up at the Christopher Street Pride Parade, and I think it was exactly like 50 years ago, and saying to like the cis gay people, like, you forgot about us. How'd you already forget about us? Like, you know, like it's 2 years after Stonewall, you already like are ignoring us and all the trans people who are in prison and everything like that. So, so I think that's part of it too, is like it's built in, and so you have to really resist it, or you get kind of like drawn along. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I can add just a little bit more onto there. Is one of the reasons why we were able to do what we did is because of our independence, because we weren't tied to any structure, any, you know, existing organization or group. We didn't we weren't beholden to anyone except the people, except what the community wanted, right? We were just pushing for those demands, right? And if the public of Lawrence decided they didn't want those demands, of course, we would stop pushing for it. But that's really the only group of people we were accountable to, because we didn't have any money. We didn't have any money.
Yeah, we've never had money. Bunch of volunteers.
It's an all volunteer basis, you know, and that was something we were explicit about from the beginning. We didn't want to become professionalized paid staff. We wanted to be all volunteers so that we could maintain our political independence, or independence from any of these structures, and therefore always be able to maintain whatever approach we needed. If we needed to be militant, we could do that. You know, if you're depending on other people's money and other people's patronage, you can't be militant if they don't want you to. But we were able to do that because of our independence.
One last thing that I want to add that I think is really awesome about this is, you know, like Monroe, I was mad and I was sad, and I, you know, was just like talking to Monty, and then this ball got rolling. And when the three of us had the initial conversation, we said, like Monroe mentioned, this is a single issue campaign. This is not an organization. Like, we're just gonna try and like get as many people involved as possible and get these demands met. But what happened is an organization has formed out of it. And so Miguel and I are now very, very, very much just like in supportive roles when it comes to TLC. Like there's, you know, all trans leadership, it's just amazing to, I don't know, to be part of that, to have been able to like do this campaign and then have like trans people like take it and really go with it and like make it their own and make an organization for themselves and make community for themselves. Because like, I know like Isaac's not here tonight, but he, you know, I've known him for a long time, and he's always kind of bemoaned the fact that he didn't know other trans folks in Lawrence, and you know, and he was saying like he's really grateful for this community, and now he's in a leadership role in this organization, and yeah, and so that's just like very satisfying to be like, yeah, like we thought it would just be done, you know, like it would be done, but it's really cool to see it become something totally new and beautiful and very much like trans-led and trans-centered and for the community.
You have ideas, come talk to us. If you want to spend hours of your time working on trans things, come talk to us. Yeah, that's my final pitch. We're literally just like people, just some people, some trans people.
If y'all got some fun October ideas, we don't have any. Not to be.
We're getting there.
But like, we have ideas, but
Not enough. We want feedback. October is spooky season. Come on, get hyped, y'all.
Is the
I
best
like
way,
the events committee.
oh, sorry, is the best way for people to follow, you can repeat this into the mic if you want to, but is the best way for people to follow TLC's work Instagram or?
Most likely, yeah, but
so the question is, where's the best way to follow us and see what we're up to? So we are active on both Facebook and Instagram. That is the best way to find out what's happening. Any other questions?
That sounds brutal.
I can't. Yeah, I think so.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much for coming.
You did this. I mean, the No SB 180 in Lawrence campaign would not have been possible without everyone that made it possible. Everyone that showed up, spoke out, talked to their neighbors, talked to their friends. I became extremely irritating about this. And I still am. So that's the consequence of this. It was amazing to see everyone show up and actually say, no, we care about our trans friends and our trans neighbors and the trans people that live here in Florence.
Keep doing it.
Keep it up. Thank you.
Yeah,